Welcome back, fellow readers. This is Swap, and today we are going to be taking a look at Solo Leveling, the novel series Volume 1. That's right, we finally have an official English translation and printing for the source material for Solo Leveling. This is written by Chugong, translated by Young Im and J Torres, and published by Yen. We're going to be talking a lot about this book, and I can't wait, but first, we're going to take a look at what this book actually looks like. Alright y'all, so here we have Solo Leveling Volume 1, and so don't be fooled, this is not a leather book like you might think it is from the images online. So here we have basically just a regular soft cover. It just has a little design to make it look like a leather book. Now over here we have the little lizard symbol, and we have it's sort of like a gold foil embedded in it, so it's pretty cool. We're going to take a look at the spine real quick, because the spine is what this book is going to look like when you put it on your shelf. And we're going to take a quick look at the back. So we have the synopsis of the book here, we have the symbol again, and we just have, the regular logo and info about the book from Yen on the bottom. To show you all real quick, this is a very flexible softcover book. We're going to take a look inside. So we're just going to see that there is one little cover illustration featuring Jin Woo standing there with a dagger. And we're just going to take a look inside. We have the little cover page here, and we have the table of contents. So this book has the prologue and 10 chapters, and this book is just a little over 300 pages. Alright, let's head on back to the review. Alright, so for my Solo Leveling fans out there, you probably already know the story, you're up to date with the webtoon, and the one question you have in your head is how much of this story is being collected in this first volume of the novel. And the answer to that is that this collects all the way from the beginning up to, I would say, the beginning parts of chapter 36 of the webtoon, where Chairman Yu of the White Tigers is looking for Jin Woo. So, you get a pretty sizable chunk of the story all in just this one volume. Alright, next up is for my light novel fans who have yet to read Solo Leveling, and maybe you've heard about it or you're interested in it and you want to see whether or not it's worth picking up. So that's what we're going to discuss right now. We're going to take a deep dive into what this story is all about. So without further ado, let's begin. So what is this story all about? So this story takes place in modern day Earth, and this Earth happens to have RPG fantasy-like elements. And so this whole planet has these dungeons that spawn randomly throughout the world, and it's up to people who have awoken as hunters to be able to take out these dungeons and the monsters that are inside them and be able to defeat the bosses inside these dungeons. And modern day weapons and regular civilians, they don't really have any effect when it comes to combating these monsters. It's only the hunters and their special weapons that can actually take on these monsters. So that's why the world has to sort of rely on these hunters and regulate them. And here's where we meet our main character, Jin Woo. So Jin Woo is an E rank hunter, and you probably guessed it, E rank is the very low of the low, going all the way from E to S rank. And so Jin Woo, he is also considered the weakest of the E rank. He has very low stats, he's not very strong, he gets injured a lot when he goes to these dungeon raids. And you have to keep in mind that these hunters, when they awaken as hunters, they get these certain amount of static stats, and they also have certain abilities, but you don't really level up, at least not yet, we don't. And so they kind of have their own place in society already as to how they get ranked as soon as they get awoken as hunters. And it's actually very difficult to move up in the ranks as a hunter, because there are certain ways to acquire new abilities, and that's by finding rare skill stones through monsters or getting better equipment. But it's very difficult, and it requires a lot of money sometimes to be able to obtain that. And so it's actually very hard for these hunters to be able to advance in their ranks. Alright, let's get back to Jin Woo. So Jin Woo is a weak little hunter. He knows that he's not a very good hunter. He can't really kill creatures that great, and he gets injured a lot. And so the one reason why he keeps doing this line of work is because the money that he can make doing as a hunter is a little bit more than what he would make as a civilian. And so he needs this money in order to sustain his family. His mother is in the hospital, she's very ill, so those hospital bills are racking up, and his little sister is going to school, so those tuition bills are coming in too. So the way the story goes is that Jin Woo joins a raiding group, they go through this dungeon, and they find a secret entrance to another hidden dungeon within the dungeon. And so, I don't want to spoil what happens exactly, but as all that stuff happens, he ends up waking up in a hospital. And we find out that our character Jin Woo has reawakened as a hunter. Now, reawakening is not something new to this world. It's not something that's completely special, but it's special enough that it gains a lot of attention from people, because when a hunter reawakens, it means that they get more stats, and maybe they get more skills to the point where they can be pushed up in ranks in the hunter. So someone who is C rank can now be a B or an A rank. Someone who is D rank can now be as strong as a C or a B rank hunter. Now, after showing signs of possibly being reawakened, the Hunters Association brings in special people to come in and inspect Jinwoo, get his side of the story of what happened in that dungeon. And so they sort of assess him with a special little tool to see what his stats are. And after they gauge his assessment, they realize that maybe they were wrong about Jinwoo. He probably wasn't reawakened because he still has very low stats. And in fact, his stats are abysmally low that they probably think he's probably the weakest person on earth. So with everything said and done, people pack up their stuff, they get leaving, and Jinwoo is left by himself in the hospital bed. And that is where things start to get really, really interesting. So when Jinwoo is all alone, he realizes that there is this floating UI hologram thing that's above him, and he doesn't know what it is and what to make sense of it, but he recognizes that it looks like some sort of thing that you would see in a video game, like a little screen. And so he starts to interact with it. You know, there's unread messages, there's little quests that he can undertake, there's little objectives under each little quest. And so he's trying to find out what this thing is and what it does. And at first he ignores it, but eventually he realizes that this thing has the ability to make him stronger. And that's what this story is all about, because you gotta remember, in this world, hunters do not naturally develop like in an RPG game that we're used to. Jinwoo is given this strange phenomenon, and he's taken it to his advantage in order to be able to get stronger each and every day. And this UI system is just like a video game. He can see his inventory, he can see his actual stats, so he can measure just how weak he is and how strong he's getting each time. And so with each passing day, he gets new objectives, he gets rewarded with new ability points, he puts them into certain stats, and he actually starts looking and feeling stronger than he normally did. Now, I thought the execution of the story of this book was very spot on. You get all the details that are coming through the eyes of Jinwoo. And so you get all these little details that come up naturally over time. It doesn't feel like you're oversaturated in one whole chapter, just giving you full of rules and details about these monsters and dungeons or the leveling up system. That all just occurs over time, and it has a very nice pace to it. Meanwhile, this is all happening, you get to experience this whole new leveling system phenomenon through Jinwoo. And so Jinwoo is going through his menu, he's going through his inventory, looking up all these stats and skills. You get to read up on all these different skills that he obtains, the different mana costs, how much the effects go through, and it just makes it really fun and engaging to experience. And I also like how this book doesn't just focus on characters within South Korea. You get this whole world around you, and so, you know, there might be some incidents that happen with Jinwoo regarding a certain character, and said character might have a certain twist with relations to someone in the US, and so now you have this ominous twist where someone from the United States who happens to be a very high-ranking hunter is gonna look into Jinwoo and maybe one of the other characters, and so we get this little ominous tease as to what's gonna be coming in the next volumes. And then we move on to the side characters. Now, the side characters play a huge role in keeping the story moving forward. So we have three main side characters that you get mentioned a lot in this story. And one of these characters is Jinho. Now, Jinho is a character who gets to meet Jinwoo through one of the raids, and he has his own personal family objective to complete. And, you know, Jinwoo isn't really interested at first as to what Jinho is talking about because he has his own thing going on. But he gets a little enticed because Jinho's objective coincides a little bit with what Jinwoo wants to do. And Jinwoo wants to go to all these different dungeons and be able to defeat monsters and defeat bosses so that he can attain new skills and get new stats and level up and all that work. And then you get the other two characters. You have Chi-yul and Jo-hee. Now, Chi-yul, he's a veteran, he's a hardened warrior when it comes to being a hunter, and so he has sort of experienced some of the things alongside Jinwoo, and so he knows some of the horrors and some of the, I guess, politics behind hunters, and so he's always there to sort of help out Jinwoo whenever he's in a bind. And then we have Jo-hee. So Jo-hee is one of these love interests in this story alongside with Jinwoo. And so Jinwoo and Jo-hee have sort of a little history because she is a healer, and when Jinwoo was a weak little hunter and he would always get injured in all these raids, it would always be Jo-hee who would be there in the area to be able to heal him back to health. and so they have a little story going on. And she's still sort of interested in Jinwoo, but as Jinwoo changes, especially with his stats, his attitude starts to change a little bit too. Her perspective on Jinwoo changes over time too, so it's interesting to see that little dynamic play out over time. Now, these side characters don't get a whole lot of screen time, but when they do get in the story, they make a huge impact, enough to the point where you actually care about these characters and you want to see how they develop over time alongside with Jinwoo. And speaking of Jinwoo, he actually has a very interesting side to him too, because you got to remember, in this world, it's not just a one big hunter world. There's a whole modern society that lives coincidentally with these hunters, and so you have this sort of internal juggle with Jinwoo, where he's trying to balance out being a hunter and wanting to get stronger, and versus having his own personal modern life. And so you get this a little mix of slice of life and action and adventure in this whole story. With that being said, we move on to my final verdict, and my final verdict for this book is that it is a must read. Honestly, this book was so fun and so engaging. It only took me a couple nights to blaze through it. This book has got everything going for it: the amazing fight scenes, the modern life society, the leveling up system with RPG elements. If any of that stuff interests you, then this is the book that you have to pick up. I swear you will not regret buying and picking up this book. And if you're already a fan of solo leveling, then this is a no-brainer. You should already be picking up this book, because this is one of the few ways that Western folk like us can support this series and the author behind this series. And that, folks, is Solo Leveling Volume 1, the novel series. Post your comments down below. Let me know what you think about solo leveling. And if you like this video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. We're going to be bringing more content like this in the near future. With that being said, I will see you all next time. Bye, everyone.